guys, so I've been wanting to do a huge fall baking video for a while now and just do some fall themed recipes. So the first one is these Libby's pumpkin bars, and I'm not actually a big fan of pumpkin, but I've had some canned pumpkin in my pantry for a while and I wanted to use it up, so I've got some melted butter there. And I'm pretty dang sure I have to this recipe because it said it made 48 bars, and that was kind of intimidating because I wasn't sure if they would be good or not. I have never tried this recipe, but don't worry, they turned out amazing. So it's 1 cup of butter, but like I said, I halved the recipe, so I just used 1 stick for a half a cup, and then 1.5 cups of sugar. So I used half of that, whatever half of that is. I'm not doing the math right now. And just blended that together really well, and then you add in your eggs, pumpkin puree, and then of course you start with your wet ingredients and getting those all blended and stuff, and then you add like your dry ingredients. So I did 2 eggs, and then just 1 cup of flour. And then next I added a teaspoon of cinnamon, a half a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, and then I also added a half a teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. So right now I'm reading it to you as the half measurements, but as always I'll have the recipes down in the description box so that you can try them out. But like I was saying earlier, I'm not that big of a fan of pumpkin, like at all. Like I'm not really into pumpkin bread and stuff, but these were really good. They have a very yummy cream cheese icing that goes on them, and it's a really thin coat of icing, and they are super moist, and they're just like a cold, almost cake bar that you put in your refrigerator, and they are so good. So earlier, whenever I said put all your wet ingredients together, I meant except for the pumpkin. So you'll need a can of pumpkin puree, and the recipe calls for 15 ounces. So do half of that, whatever half of that is. I don't remember how many ounces this can was. So I'm wondering if I just used half of it, but then also if I just used half of it, I have no idea what I used the other half for. If you see the light going on and off in the background, my husband is back there, so there were some clips that I just cut him out of. He was walking back and forth, and it's this gorgeous orange color, and this batter was like so light and fluffy. So here I'm just spraying a sheet of parchment paper on like a jelly roll pan. You could use a sheet pan as long as it has somewhat of a, they don't have to be high sides, but it does need a side on it. That way it'll be in a nice bar shape. And I'm just trying to spread this out the best I can. I did notice that even though I tried to make it really smooth, a lot of times, you know, with cake batter, you smooth it out, but it'll smooth over in the oven eventually as it bakes. This was not that way. It actually kept the lines in it from spreading, so I wish I would have done maybe something else to get it even more smooth, but it's fine because the icing covers it. But whenever you get it smoothed out, you're going to bake it at 350 for 20 to 25 minutes or until a toothpick comes out clean. They are pretty moist. I could have probably baked mine for even a little bit longer. Mine were done, but they were very, very soft. So like I definitely had to eat them with a fork, and they do like firm up a little bit more as they refrigerate. So I'm gonna go ahead and bake these. And then we're gonna get started on the frosting. So to make half the frosting recipe, you're only gonna need half a block of cream cheese, so 4 ounces, and make sure it's softened, and then add in like a few tablespoons of butter. I think it's 1/4 of a stick is what you need. And then of course add your vanilla extract, and then you're gonna add some confectioner sugar, a little bit at a time, and then you'll add a little splash of milk at the end to thin it out. I think that's what I did. So I got the icing the perfect consistency that I wanted it, and you'll see that I try to move the bars out so that they can cool, because the parchment paper, I don't really like the parchment paper I have right now, but I'm using it until it's gone. So it gets really thin, and the moisture from these bars made the parchment paper very soggy. So I took them out of the pan to cool, and then you'll see later that I move them back into the pan to ice them. So, and I'm just kind of try to spread the icing as evenly as possible, and you can see the lines in it for me not smoothing it out perfectly. But this icing is really good. It makes just enough to make a thin coat over everything. And I can't imagine, like, because this made a lot of bars, and I cut them pretty big. So if I would have used the complete recipe instead of halving it, we would have had a lot of bars, and I wouldn't know what to do with all of them. So we even shared these with extended family. So I don't really know what I would do with 48 bars. So I would give these probably like an 8 out of 10. I think that's just because pumpkin's not my favorite thing, but this is probably my favorite pumpkin dessert. And my husband said that they were a little on the moist side. Like, he likes moist things, but these were almost like fudgy, if that makes sense, like the texture of a really fudgy brownie. So he wasn't a fan of that. I think he thought they would be more cakey or more like a pumpkin bread texture. And I'm just getting a rubber spatula out to scrape all that good icing out. But my husband still really he enjoyed them. I think it's just not what he was expecting. And he is a big fan of pumpkin, if I haven't said that already. So I've got like 3 or 4 more recipes to share with y'all coming up. And one of them is my favorite. It's a cheesecake. You'll see, I tried to cut these as neatly as possible, but I kept having to wipe the knife off in between. I tried using that small spatula you see there, and it was making more of a mess than the butter knife was. So the butter knife did the best. I think I could have used like a hot knife, but I wasn't gonna do all that. They were already so moist, I didn't want to introduce any water. So I just cut them up like this and put them in that little plastic container and put them in the fridge, and they firmed up after a while. But this is what the inside looks like. I'm really excited for this next one because I'm going to be making ginger snap cookies, and I'm not making them because I want ginger snap cookies. I'm making them because I want to make a cheesecake with a ginger snap cookie crust. In a little while, I'm going to be making cream cheese. In fact, not cream cheese, cheesecake. In fact, I already have 5 blocks set out because I'm going to need like 4.5 blocks for this cheesecake. I'm not experienced in cheesecake. I've only made a really simple one before that I made like a really small batch version of, so I've never used the springform pan for such a thing like that. So that will be interesting, but the cheesecake recipe is just a classic cheesecake recipe, and I wanted to make it fall-esque by making the crust ginger snap instead of graham cracker. So we're gonna make the ginger snaps. They've got to refrigerate for a little while, so hopefully this cream cheese will be good in room temperature, softened by the time I want to use it. This recipe, I'm pretty sure I left as is. It's called the best recipe for ginger snap cookies. I don't know. They were good. I don't think they are my favorite ginger snaps, but I wasn't too worried about them being perfect because I was going to turn them into a crust anyway. We did enjoy a few, but yeah. So this recipe is supposed to make 4 dozen cookies. I think they were supposed to be small, because mine didn't make that many, but I didn't double it or half it or anything like that, I don't think. But basically I mixed together the sugar, and it calls for 1.5 cups of sugar and then 3/4 cup of oil, and then 1/4 cup molasses, and I'm just whisking that all together, making sure there's no clumps or anything. and I added in 1 egg. Sometimes I like to make a little game out of like seeing if I can get molasses or honey to go back in its jar without like any spilling on the sides or anything. So I did it pretty good this time. I like doing the turn and twisting it and stuff. Okay, so now I'm adding in 2 cups of all-purpose flour. It's said to use pastry flour. I don't have that. I think that's like a very light and fluffy flour, maybe like cake flour. I'm not 100% sure. I don't really know anybody who uses pastry flour specifically, but then to that I add 2 teaspoons of baking soda, a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of ginger, and a half a teaspoon salt, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna pinch it out because that's what I always do. Sometimes if I have a measuring spoon out, I will measure it, but not typically. Okay, so I'm just gonna whisk this together, and then it's a bit too thick to just whisk, so I had to break out the rubber spatula again to kind of clean it out of the whisk. Okay, and this turns out to be a very, very thick, chunky dough. It wasn't really dry. I think that's because of all the oil that's in it. There's a lot of oil in this recipe, and you will learn in a little bit how that comes to bite me in the butt, that there was so much oil in this recipe because of the pan that I used. So you'll find out. So I'm just making sure this is all mixed together well, and then I'm going to scoop it out, roll it into little balls, and then bake them. You are supposed to like coat them in sugar before you bake them, but since mine were going to be turned into crust and crumbled, I didn't want the extra sugar crystals in there, so I just didn't do that part. So it has to be refrigerated for an hour before we bake it. And then when we go to bake it, you're going to bake it at 350 degrees for like 10 to 12 minutes. I always feel like cookies take longer than they say they're going to take. That might just be my oven, but the ginger snap cookies turned out looking so good. I was tapping them to make sure that they were firm to the touch, so they actually have a snap like they're supposed to have, and I let them cool completely, and then I think I only used 9 because mine were pretty large. I used that like 1-inch scoop or whatever for them. And I used 9 ginger snap cookies for the crust of the cheesecake and added the butter that the cheesecake recipe calls for the crust. So the cheesecake recipe that I used, it had its own crust recipe for graham crackers or whatever, and I just used the same amount of butter for it, and it's like 6 tablespoons. It does call for like 1.5 cups of graham cracker crumbs, but I wasn't gonna like measure out the amount of crumbs I had. And it does call for you to add a tablespoon of sugar to it, but there was already so much sugar that I just decided not to do that. And then I just pulse it in my small blender. So I brought out my springform pan and started putting the crust in. The recipe didn't call for it to like spray or put butter on it or anything, so I just go to town pressing it in and using a measuring cup to make sure it's evenly pressed and like there's not like finger marks in it and stuff. And it also didn't say that the crust needed to be all the way up the edge of the pan, so I was doing my best to follow directions with what I had. And you're supposed to bake the crust at 350 degrees for like 8 minutes. But mine had so much oil in it that I had to bake it until it just looked like it dried out a little bit. And then I left it completely to cool before I put the cheesecake mixture in it. So I'm just like smoothing it out the best I can using a measuring cup. I've seen other people do this, but using the measuring cup really helped me out to get it nice and even. Oh, and what's funny about this cheesecake is our power went out like the next day, and I had this cheesecake in my fridge. So I brought it over to my in-laws' house for us to share it because I did not want my very first good cheesecake to go to waste. So here I am starting on the cheesecake filling. And I'm just putting in 4.5 8-ounce packages of softened cream cheese. I actually had the forethought to make sure these were nice and softened instead of unevenly softening them by the microwave, so which is what I would usually do for like cream cheese icings and stuff. But I wanted to make sure I was following it the best I could so that I could get a really good cheesecake out of this. And then I add in 1.25 cups of sugar, and then I forgot about the half of a package, so I had to dig that one out, and I'm glad I only had cream cheese in there so that I could save that and it wouldn't be wasted. So I'm adding in 6 eggs and just making sure they're beating in well after each one that I add. And I just like to crack them all into a large measuring cup with like a pour spout. That way it's easy to put one in at a time, instead of going back and forth cracking eggs into a separate bowl and stuff like that. So then I added a 1/4 cup of sour cream and a 1/2 tablespoon vanilla. I never really measure my vanilla extract. That is one thing in this that I still just eyeballed, but I think a lot of people do that. So, and this was something interesting. So I was supposed to lay out several sheets of aluminum foil. It said to use heavy duty. I did not have that. Well, mine actually might be heavy duty. I don't know. It's Aldi brand. Anyway, so I laid it out and kind of like staggered it so that there wouldn't be like a clear seam for water to get into, because this cheesecake is going to be water bathed, and that's supposed to keep it evenly cooking and prevent cracking and stuff like that. So I made sure that it was sealed up good with aluminum foil. And like I said, this recipe didn't say to spray the pan with anything, so it felt kind of risky putting the cheesecake in there, but you'll see it does kind of work out in the end. Like, it was a great cheesecake, but you'll see what happens. And I test tasted some of the cheesecake filling, and oh my goodness, it is so good. So this is how it's looking. I had to like roll up the aluminum foil on the sides. I wanted it high enough so the water couldn't get in, but I also, it said to roll it away from the top edges. That way, if your cheesecake puffs up a lot, then like it won't hit the aluminum foil and stuff. So I had some boiling water in a kettle, and I'm just pouring that in, and to make sure it's like over halfway the height of the cheesecake. And the roasting pan I chose was pretty dang big, so I had to boil more water after this to finish filling it up, but I think it only took like 2 kettles worth. Good morning. Are you ready to see how I did on the cheesecake? I am in a bit of a rush because I've got to run some errands and stuff today, but the cheesecake had to chill overnight, so about to see how this turned out. I am nervous. Oh, before I actually start doing this, I have a platter. I would put it on a cake stand, but a cake stand's not going to fit in my refrigerator very well. So I've got this platter that I thrifted, and I think it's going to fit on that. I probably will leave the metal piece on the bottom of this, so it's going to fit. Let's see if we can get it out. Oh my gosh, I'm nervous. Alright. It smells delicious, and when I tap on it, it feels solid. Okay. Here we go. It's open. It cracked. Can y'all see that huge crack? I don't think this is going to come out. I don't think it is. And I will be so sad. Let me get a butter knife. Let's see. I don't think that's going to work. So this pan is not non-stick, and maybe that's where I went wrong. And you're probably watching this like, duh, that makes sense. If you don't use a non-stick pan, it's gonna stick. This is some like Pampered Chef springform pan that I got, and it's stainless steel, and that's why I wanted it, is because it didn't have that non-stick coating. But the recipe I was following didn't say to line it with parchment or anything, so I didn't. Okay, so not all of it was really sticking, it's just the top edge. So the top of it's gonna look bad. I don't even know what the sides look like at this point. What? Okay. So it kind of tricked me. Okay, this side looks bad. Yes, I agree. That's all cracked. But like, check out this side. That side's not cracked. It looks good. I can smell the ginger snap crust. Okay, so I can take pictures with this. I was thinking like I wanted to save this for my thumbnail, and then I couldn't. The condensation, though, makes it look a little bit white on top, so I'm going to dab that off. Wipe it, because that does not look good. I wonder if I should, like, sprinkle some cinnamon or something on top to give it some color. I don't know. Alright, I'm going to take some pictures with this, and then we're going to do a little taste test. Alright, are y'all ready to do a taste test? I'm going to try to cut off of the side that doesn't look bad. So that we get a nice clean line. Okay. It's coming up. That's a good sign. Okay, I'm about to bring it to y'all. Oh, that looks so good. Oh my gosh, I love that. How this is. It looks a little soft. I don't know if y'all can see that texture. Maybe it should have baked a little longer. I was terrified though that I would bake it too long because I didn't want it to have that crumbly, weird texture. So maybe that's why it cracked. Maybe it would have set up. Maybe it wasn't set fully, and maybe I could try this recipe again, see how that works. It has a perfectly smooth texture. Crust set up well, which I wasn't expecting. The crust is very good. For me, going rogue on the crust turned out very well. Okay. I'm glad I did this. It was a bit stressful last night. Some of the oil from the crust, actually not some, a lot of the oil from the crust leaked through the springform pan. I've never really used a springform pan for a cheesecake, as silly as that sounds. I've used it for like coffee cakes and stuff like that. So I didn't think about it doing that. I'm going to put a baking sheet underneath it. But it made my house so smoky, and the oven was smoky. Cheesecake does not taste smoky, which is great. We're about to make an apple pie together. This is an apple pie I've made since I was dating my husband. And for reference, we've been married almost 7 years. So in December, it'll be 7 years. I'm going to start taking the pie crust out. I made 2 of these rounds of pie dough yesterday, and what was I gonna say? My brain. Sorry if you see my house is junky. I just got home from picking up our Azure Standard order. Anyway, so I'm kind of like, my brain's not all there yet. It's catching up. Okay, so yesterday I made 2 of these pie doughs. We only need 1 because this pie does not call for a top crust, because who likes the crust in a pie anyway? This has more like a streusel topping, so it's really delicious. And I am not a big apple pie person, but I've always liked this. This is the best in my opinion. It's the Pioneer Woman's recipe. So this is not the Pioneer Woman's pie dough recipe. She has one that's fine, but I just whipped this up in my blender, or you could use a food processor, high-powered blender. I used like a Ninja blender. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I'll leave all the recipes, if I haven't said it earlier in the video, down in the description box. I always do that, just in case you're new here and don't know. Okay, so I'm going to leave this. This has been refrigerating overnight, and I'm just going to leave this to set out for a few minutes. I still want it to be cold, but I want it to be easy to roll out. So we need, like, I think it says 6 to 7 cups sliced and peeled Granny Smith. Now, I had some other apples. I've used like Pink Lady and Gala apples, or Gala, however you say it, before. These are really tiny. That's really tiny. But I went to Aldi today, so I just bought a bag of Granny Smiths. This full bag was like $3.99, so not bad at all. I'll probably see how many this gets me and then see if I need to do more. So I do have an apple, the thing that you like clamp onto your counter. Well, mine doesn't clamp, mine has a suction cup. And then you like turn the crank and it cranks the apples. Not cranks the apple, but it peels and slices the apple for you. But let me bring my trash can over. But I'm not going to use that because I don't want our apple slices to be that small. They tend to like disintegrate and we just like the texture better. That was my oven preheating. But these slices are going to be pretty dang small. So honestly, this might take forever. And I might have to cut the camera off if it takes too long and then meet up with you whenever I actually get somewhere. So I don't think I finished saying the pie dough. It makes 2. So I made 2 and I'll use the other crust for something else. If you like crust, I don't know very many people that do. You could just do the top crust on this, but it won't be as flavorful. So this is actually a caramel apple pie. Jokes on me because I don't have any caramel sauce. I could make some, but the apple pie is really good even without it, and I've made it without it before. I do have pecans. I had some in my freezer. I keep the pecans in my freezer for like to keep them from going rancid because the oils in nuts can go rancid. But they have been in my freezer for a very long time. So if you decide to start keeping your nuts in the freezer, just make sure they're sealed well. This wasn't sealed like airtight, and so now they kind of taste like the freezer. Just a tip there for you. Okay, go ahead and start peeling these. So it should come out after this video, but I filmed an Azure Standard haul today. I don't know if I said that yet. Like I said, my brain is not braining right now, but that video should come out after this one. The hurricane and everything kind of postponed a lot of my videos. I didn't have them, like I filmed a good bit for future videos, but I didn't schedule them on YouTube yet because I hadn't even edited them yet. Thank y'all for bearing with me. My pie dish is a deep dish, so I'm fine with cutting up a lot of apples. Plus, these Granny Smiths I got just for this purpose, so I really do want to try to use as many as I can. Honestly, I'm probably going to use as many as I have the patience to peel. And it's already like after 4:30, so I'm going to have to, yeah. So I'm going to have to start on dinner soon. So I was going to try to get this pie in the oven that way, because it takes about 50 minutes total to cook. And I was hoping that way, by the time it's time to eat dinner, the pie will be ready or almost ready, and it'll still be warm whenever we go to eat it. Oh, I did make sure to go to Publix while I was out and get their vanilla ice cream. If you have not tried Publix ice cream, it is so good. Their specialty flavors are super good. And their vanilla's, fine. But since I was already out, I made sure to get a good vanilla ice cream to go with this. I'll go ahead and put some lime and lemon juice on this. It just calls for the juice of a half of a lemon, but I have some lime juice. I've also done this before. I've made this so many times. And you just want a little bit. It gives it a tang. I want to use that lime juice up. That's why I want to use that. And then the lemon juice. And I'm just going to stir it as I put more apples in there. we're gonna add a half cup of sugar. Just making sure my hands aren't wet. I'm gonna use a regular cane sugar. I just have the kind that they didn't take the natural like molasses out. So and it's a bit of a coarser sugar. Just add 4 tablespoons of flour. One, 2, 3, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm not going to measure that out. Just going to pinch it. Now, something that's interesting about this recipe is it does not call for any spices. None. Not even in the topping. But what I've always done is add a little bit of cinnamon, at least. And we are not big cinnamon fans. Like, I like a cinnamon roll, but I don't like cinnamon in like everything. Don't like cinnamon in a lot of stuff. So I've got some cinnamon here, and I'd say maybe about a teaspoon. And if you forget to put it in this part, you can also just put it in the topping, and then the pie will have enough flavor. So don't panic on that. I've done that before. Also, if I do not use nutmeg in this pie, my dad's not having any of this, but he would come get me if he would have a problem if I did not put nutmeg in it, because not seasoning a pie is like a crime. So we're gonna, and you only need like a pinch of nutmeg, and honestly I've made it without nutmeg and just use cinnamon and it turns out fine. So like, also don't worry too hard over it is what I'm saying. And if you like cinnamon, add enough cinnamon to where the apples are like all brown like that, and then you'll have a perfectly seasoned pie to your liking. I'm just gonna leave it like this. It's lightly spiced. I keep saying seasoned. That makes it sound like it's savory, but anyway. Okay, so this part is all done. Now what I need to do is roll my pie crust out. Using this lovely pie dish. This is also Pioneer Woman. My sister-in-law got me this back whenever me and my husband were dating, probably because I was making these pies. So we've had this pie dish for a while. I know it's a Christmas one. It says baked with love. How cute. But anyway, so I'm gonna keep that right there. So I'm going to get my marble rolling pin. You could put this in the freezer or refrigerator if you wanted to, like if you had one of these, and it'll keep the pie crust very cold. What I'm going to do is I just like using this for the sheer weight of it, because you don't have to like try as hard to roll it out because it's so heavy, it weighs down the dough. Just got it between the 2 layers of parchment. I'm going to need this knife so before I hurt myself. I don't know if the pie crust is still going to be too firm. I'm sweating now, but I think we've made progress. So I can see. That's how big it is. So I'm going to try to... Okay, it's not sticking. Too bad. That's good. Try. Ooh, it got a little soft. Okay, so for the topping, we're gonna need a half cup of flour. And I might honestly add a little bit less because in the past, streusel topping makes a lot. So, okay, maybe that is about a half cup. But it calls for like a stick and a half of butter. And I'm just using a stick today. You are welcome to follow the recipe to a T if you want, but just please add cinnamon, unless you're like allergic to it or something. But this butter is pretty cold. Been sitting out a few minutes, but not too terribly long. And what I'm going to do is just cut the butter into the flour. I think I was just being lazy and I don't want to wash that many dishes later, but this is dishwasher safe. Pretty dang sure. And I can use the fork to unclog the pastry cutter. Okay, so after this, we're going to add a cup of brown sugar, a half a cup of oats, Oh, look at that beauty. I wanted you to be able to hear the bubbling, but some people were at my house, so I had to cut out the sound. But oh my goodness, this is such a beautiful pie. Please use the pie crust recipe that I used because it stretched to fit the pan without me tearing it at all. I was so excited about that. So I had to cut some of the clips of me like actually putting the explaining that part to you about me having to stretch out the pie crust because I ran out of storage on my camera and I needed to clear it out and stuff, but I also needed to get this done, so I just went ahead and did it. Same with chopping the pecans up. I just gave them a rough chop and all that, and oh my goodness, this was good. So we actually went out for dinner this night and then came back for the pie. I told my husband I wanted to come back and have the dessert, and so we did, but it was still warm. This pie stays warm for a long time. I just covered it and left it on the counter, and we were gone for a couple hours probably, so it stayed warm for a while, but I wanted it like nuclear hot before I ate it because it has been so cold. It has been like in the 40s in the morning here. And this pie is just so beautiful. It turned out so good. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.